The blue and red lights flashed across the cabin walls, painting everything in chaos. My wife stood on the porch crying, while two officers shouted for me to drop the keys to my own front door. I froze, half in disbelief, half in anger. Just 10 minutes earlier, I'd been unpacking groceries, ready to spend my first peaceful weekend back home after months away. And now, I was being accused of breaking into my own property. Across the yard, she stood, arms crossed, smug smile, clipboard in hand, Linda Hayes, the HOA president. She was yelling about violations, claiming our land wasn't legally ours anymore. The cops listened to her, not me. She pointed, demanded, barked orders like she owned the whole street. My kids hid behind the window, terrified. I remember thinking, this can't be real. I served overseas, fought for people's rights, and now some woman with a clipboard was taking away my home. And as she threatened to have me removed permanently, I realized something. She had no idea who she was talking to, because I wasn't just another homeowner. I was the state official who regulated HOA boards like hers. The blue and red lights bounced off the pine trees like some kind of cruel joke. I stood in my own driveway, hands half raised, while two officers pointed flashlights at me, demanding to know what I was doing here. It was surreal. The house behind me, that quiet log cabin with the porch swing and the smell of fresh cedar, my house, suddenly felt like someone else's property. And standing across the yard, arms crossed and face stiff with that signature smugness, was Linda Hayes, the self-proclaimed queen of the neighborhood. Clipboard in hand, shouting over the chaos like she was running a courtroom instead of a cul-de-sac. She's the HOA president, one officer told me, as if that meant something legally binding. She reported a break-in. I let out a short laugh, not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe this was real. Break-in? I said. Officer, that's my cabin. But she cut me off before I could explain. Not anymore, she snapped. This property's out of compliance, and per HOA Regulation 17B, you forfeited your ownership rights. You know that kind of anger that doesn't explode and it just sinks in? That's what I felt. My wife stood behind me, clutching our kids. My son whispered, "Dad, are we in trouble?" I wanted to scream, to shout back that this was absurd, but instead, I took a slow breath and said, "Ma'am, you're making a big mistake." She didn't know how big. When I first came back home after years working out of state, the cabin felt like a miracle. My late father left it to me. A quiet little piece of land by the lake, surrounded by old pines and good memories. I thought it'd be peaceful. Just fishing, family dinners, maybe a dog running through the yard. No drama, no meetings. No rules. That illusion lasted about 48 hours. The first knock came early one morning. Linda Hayes, crisp white blouse, clipboard, and that tone people use when they already think you're wrong. "Mr. Walker," she began, "you didn't file a maintenance compliance report when you moved in." "A what?" I asked. She sighed, the kind of sigh that made it sound like I was personally wasting her time. Every homeowner in Cedar Ridge is required to submit a maintenance report within 7 days of occupancy. Section 5A, I blinked. This property isn't even part of Cedar Ridge. It's outside the HOA boundary line. She gave a fake smile. "Oh, we expanded last year. You'll need to catch up on dues. $400 for the quarter." It was the confidence that got me. She said it like it was gospel, like the land had to obey her. I told her politely that I'd look into it, but I already knew something was off. 2 days later, I got my first violation notice. Apparently, my mailbox didn't meet community standards. Then it was my unapproved exterior, color. Then, and I swear this, my wind chimes were too loud during daylight hours. It went from amusing to irritating real fast. A few days later, I met my neighbor Tom, a quiet guy who worked nights. He leaned on the fence and gave me that sympathetic look people give when they've seen this movie before. "Let me guess," he said. "Linda's found you," I nodded. "You could say that," he chuckled. "She's been running this neighborhood like a dictatorship for years. Half the people here are afraid of her. The other half are moving out." He told me stories, fines for having kids' bikes on the porch, threats over Christmas lights, and even a woman who had to repaint her door 3 times because Linda didn't. Like the tone of red, it would have been funny if it wasn't so ridiculous. But then came the second, confrontation, the one that pushed everything. Over the edge, it was a Friday evening. I'd just come home from town with some lumber for the shed. My wife was setting the table, the kids were watching TV. A normal night. Then I heard tires screech outside. 2 police cruisers. I walked out to the porch, confused, and suddenly I had flashlights in my face again. "Sir, we got a report of a burglary in progress," I laughed nervously. "You're standing at the burglary scene, and the suspect is the homeowner." Before I could explain, Linda marched up from the street waving her clipboard like a warrant. "This man is illegally occupying this residence," she shouted. "He's not on the HOA's active owner registry." The officers looked at each other. "Do you have proof?" one asked. "Right here," she said, pulling out some stapled pages, fake violation reports, HOA memos, even a photo of me mowing my own lawn. That's when I realized this wasn't about dues or paperwork. She wanted control, and in her mind, control meant ownership. I told the officers calmly, "I can clear this up, but you might want to see my ID first." They hesitated. I handed over my badge, not a police badge, something else. "Department of Community Affairs, State Housing Regulation Division," one officer read aloud. Linda's face fell. "Wait."
"You work for the state?"
She stammered. "Not just work," I said. "I oversee compliance, including HOA boards." The silence after that was almost cinematic. You could practically hear her jaw tighten. One officer cleared his throat. "Ma'am, we'll need to verify your claims before taking further action." I nodded politely. "Take your time. I'll be inside my own home." By Monday morning, I'd already filed an official complaint. 3 violations in 1 week. Forgery of jurisdictional boundaries. Unauthorized expansion of HOA governance. False report to law enforcement. Basically, she'd built her empire on paper lies. The state investigators moved fast. Within days, they discovered she'd been collecting dues from non-member properties, using the money for administrative expenses, which turned out to be luxury spa trips and designer handbags. The neighborhood went from fearful to furious. An emergency HOA meeting was called that weekend. And for the first time, people spoke up. Tom stood first, shaking but determined. "You've been terrorizing this community for years, Linda. We're done." A dozen others followed. Stories poured out. Threats, fake fees, harassment. Linda tried to keep control, banging her little gavel and yelling, "Order! Order!" But the room wasn't hers anymore. The board voted unanimously to suspend her, then the state audit confirmed everything. Funds misused, boundaries falsified, laws violated, and just like that, the woman who thought she owned the neighborhood lost it all. A few weeks later, I was sitting on that same porch. No lights flashing, no shouting, no chaos. Just the sound of crickets and my daughter giggling inside. Tom waved from across the yard. "Guess we're finally free," he said. I laughed. Free and fine free. Word spread fast. The HOA was being restructured under state supervision. Residents were refunded their stolen dues. Linda was banned from holding any HOA position in the state ever again. Poetic justice, I'd say. I thought about that first night. The fear, the confusion, the flashing lights. And I realized something. Control only matters to people who don't have real power. Linda tried to rule with fear. But real authority, the kind that brings peace, comes from knowing the rules and using them fairly. I looked up at the stars that night and smiled, because the same house she tried to take from me, it was finally completely mine. Some people build fences to keep others out. But the strongest homes, they're built on truth, and no HOA can take that away.